We interrupt this Bird Box Explain for a special message for Netflix. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Grab your blindfolds and settle down with some Pop-Tarts because we have A Quiet Place 2. Wait, it's Bird Box? Okay, Bird Box, and this one promises to be a smashing good time. From the writer of Arrival and the director of The Night Manager comes one of Netflix's most anticipated horror thrillers since A Christmas Prince 2. So in this video, we're going to unravel the mysteries of Bird Box, finding out what this movie is really about, and delving into the lore of its mysterious monster. While Bird Box is the story of a woman struggling to survive in a world of vision monsters, it's equally the story of a woman overcoming her inability to love and connect. But in order to understand the ending, we must first start at the beginning and juxtapose where our protagonist Mallory began and where she ends the film. How she changes and what she learns along the way is at the core of what this film is trying to say. That and don't open your eyes. When Jessica, Mallory's sister, visits her, Mallory is essentially a shut-in. Her fridge is empty, her sister has to get her food, she's unaware of the mass suicides going on in Russia, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get Mallory out of the house, even to see a prized Arabian horse. Not to mention Mallory isn't talking to her mom, and all communication with her is done through Jessica. Essentially, she has withdrawn herself from the world. But one of the things this scene does well is convey this isolation and negative outlook of the world not only through the dialogue, but what's happening visually. The scene starts with black paint smeared over a canvas, and the irony isn't lost that the profession of our protagonist in a film that relies on people not being able to see is one of a painter. In fact, almost all the paintings in Mallory's studio are dark and depressing. Jessica remarks on the large one saying,
I think I see a whole bunch of people sitting together, but they all feel incredibly lonely.
And what better statement of today's society? We're more connected than ever, yet with more increasing rates of depression. But it's how Mallory responds to this that gets at the heart of what this film is really about. Loneliness is just incidental. It's really about people's inability to connect. Our protagonist is stating what her problem is, but she's unwilling to change it. It's only by going through the journey through the rest of this film that she will learn the error of her ways and embrace connecting with others. But let's go back to the other paintings, like this one here showing a woman alone in the darkness, isolated, just like our protagonist. Or my favorite, this one, light shining on her body, giving the slightest bit of hope. As the film progresses, Mallory is confronted with more and more scenarios which will challenge her outlook on life and force her to adapt and ultimately connect in love. We follow Mallory and Jessica to the hospital, and it's no coincidence Mallory is wearing a blue jacket with feather trim. She's our blue bird, a sad, depressed, alone creature. And this is one of my favorite shots in the entire film. The two women on their phones on the left, smiling, connecting with others, the one on the far left in bright orange, juxtaposed with our protagonist on the right. No phone, all in blue, sad on what should be a very happy day, going to see her child on the ultrasound. And the color blue becomes a recurring motif for Mallory. For the majority of the film, she wears a blue blindfold, and the scene where Mallory promises Olympia to take care of her child, what does she hand over to her? A blue bag that says thank you on it. Once Mallory agrees to this, she is metaphorically handing over a piece of her sadness. This will be chipped away further as the story goes on. Mallory finds herself holed up with a group of survivors, and if she's going to survive, she'll have to learn to connect and open up. One of the more interesting things about this film is how it's told using flashbacks. I thought this was an interesting and more dynamic way to tell the story than to simply tell it chronologically. We get little clues like the birds, who we later find out were taken from the grocery store. The birds not only provide a warning sign for the creature, but act as a symbol of caged freedom and hope. When Tom tells Girl and Boy a story about what he saw at the top of a tree, he said it was birds who then flew away. This is followed up by Mallory arguing with him about giving the kids false hope. You see, her character hasn't changed yet. That'll happen more near the end. Tom argues that the hope that they one day might be free is exactly what they need. The title, Bird Box, referring to the box Girl carries around with him that holds the three birds, is also bang on because our characters are essentially trapped birds themselves. They can hardly venture out, with only brief glimpses of the outside world, like the little holes in the bird box providing light and life for our birds. Not only birds, but other animals help relay this idea of freedom, particularly the Arabian horse Jessica wants them to look at which Mallory sees on the news shortly after Jessica's death. A horse the kind which her sister was going to purchase is now free, and horses in particular have a long history of being associated with freedom. Mallory's isolation in the survivor's house is put on full display when Olympia decides to bunk with her. Olympia even says, the baby can even sense when the mother is lonely. But when Mallory is asked about her family, she makes up an excuse to leave. We already know she doesn't talk to her mom. We'll find out later that her dad was an asshole, and we only get one sentence explaining this, but Ryan, the guy who knocked her up, basically left her. That's a lot of baggage, and these are all the culminating reasons why Mallory has such a negative outlook on life. But that negativity doesn't mean Mallory is a bad person, and the writer understood this by putting Mallory in situations where she does the right thing or does something kind. Some examples include when she sticks up to Douglas, who suggests they abandon the other survivors and just live at the grocery store, her love for animals, or getting Olympia a Beanie Baby for her child. The sad irony of all this is Mallory yearns to connect, but doesn't realize it, nor is strong enough to make that leap. At least not yet. Perhaps the saddest encapsulation of Mallory's inability to connect is calling the kids, one of which is her own flesh and blood, simply boy and girl. It dehumanizes them. Why Tom didn't give them names is beyond me, but that's besides the point. Mallory isn't acting like a mom. She's acting like a survivor. Tom even says to her, they need a mom, and you need to love them knowing you may lose them any second. Sadder is that the kids don't even call her mom. They call her by her first name, Mallory. Of course, this changes after Mallory's grueling 2-day journey with the kids down the river. After their boat capsizes and she loses contact with the kids, she's forced to feel what it's like to be truly alone. She apologizes to Girl, and when she feels the monster behind her, pleads that it take her and not the kids. She is willing to sacrifice herself for those she loves. And in the final scene at the School for the Blind, she exclaims for the first time that she is their mother, finally giving them proper names. She has completed her journey to live amongst the freedom of the birds. But this still doesn't explain the biggest mystery of the film. What the hell is the monster? Now, for the purposes of this segment, I'm going to go back referring to it as a creature and as a force, so just bear with me here. So let's start with what we know. Starting in and around summer, a mysterious force appeared in parts of Siberia and Russia, which made people suicidal. This force then spread over a matter of days, eventually spreading to California, where the majority of our story takes place. As evidenced with Jessica, this force, when seen, alters people's psychological makeup, and this alteration manifests itself in different ways depending on the person. For example, happy people like Mallory's sister, or Lydia, Douglas's wife, who he called the kindest woman on earth, kill themselves. Mallory even says when describing her sister being taken over that this force made her sister sad. This creature also draws you in by manipulating your thoughts. When Lydia is drawn to it, she hears her mom talking to her, a mom Douglas exclaims has been dead for 10 years. On the other hand, we have those who are affected by this force in different ways, those who aim to harm others, like Charlie's co-worker, who he tells us is an ex-convict, and the mental asylum escapees from Northwood. These evil ones all have in common a violent or mentally deranged past. They have already lived their deepest, darkest fears, and thus are affected differently by this creature than others. And just a note, I do know that not all who are psychologically damaged are violent. I know I'll get hate in the comments if I don't bring that up. The TV announcer says it's not a virus and its origins are unknown. But Charlie, our resident conspiracy theorist, believes he has an explanation. What's happening is the endgame, or end of the world. Humanity has been judged and we've been found wanting. Judged by what he refers to as spirit creatures who take the form of our worst fears, deepest sadness, and greatest loss. Thus, a slew of demons from around the world who manipulate the minds of their victims. These demons come from various religions and mythologies and include the Akamana and Devas from the Middle East Zoroastrian religion, Surrogat from ancient Christian occultists, and the interesting thing about this one is it made pregnant women believe their children were lobsters or spiders. It cuts directly to pregnant Mallory when he says this. There's also the Hula Jane from China and the Puka from Hulu. He says they're all different names, but they all mean the same thing, the end of us. But one thing we know is that we can't see it, and that's why we actually never see these creatures in the film. The filmmakers wanted us to put us in the shoes of the characters, to have us, the viewer, as blind as them. The closest we get to any sort of visual representation of them is when Gary props down his drawings. Now, we don't know for certain if these are just images in his head or if they're of the actual creature, but I like to think they're the various representations of the demons Charlie referred to earlier. In the end, we may not have gotten that cool creature reveal like in A Quiet Place, but that's the point. The greatest monster is the one inside of us, the creature manifesting our greatest fears, sadness, and loss. And only by confronting these inner demons, in Mallory's case her inability to connect, can we overcome and survive. I hope you enjoyed this video. I come out with all sorts of cool breakdowns, explanations, and theory videos, so please give it a like, share, and subscribe, because I have a ton of cool videos planned for the future. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.